All right. So I'm here actually with Kaylee Hackney. She's a assistant professor at Baylor, of all places, and she was actually one of my students at one point, doctoral students, and she's done some really wonderful things. So I thought I'd just introduce everybody to her. And if you know the whole story with the Reciprocity Project, I sort of built this kind of app thing, and I started putting it out into the world, and I realized that to get the word out, I sort of resonated with this group of students and researchers and stuff like that were really kind of they didn't sort of they felt lost, right? So in there was a real feeling of just being removed from the world, and just feeling really lost in the whole process. So I started doing more of these YouTube videos. So I wanted to sort of reach out to Kaylee because she's doing some great research. She's a great person, just wonderful. So I thought I'd introduce you all to her. So Kaylee, hi.
Hi, thank you for that introduction.
So do you want to introduce yourself? What kind of research you do? What's your background? Really just kind of get into why you do what you do at this moment.
Yeah, so I did my PhD at Florida State, and while I was there, I actually got pregnant with my son, and that was kind of the catalyst I already knew I was interested in like work family research, but that really was the catalyst for examining what I do now, which I focus a lot on pregnancy at work and how the stress during pregnancy can affect not only the mom, but also her baby that she's expecting. So I've got a few projects focused on that. I like to research things that I am, I guess, living through, right? So I
Mhm.
enjoy focusing on the work family stuff. I now have two kids. My oldest son is 6, and I have a daughter who's 2. And so I get to live out my research every day.
That's awesome, though. I think that's what you should be doing, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. You should be resonating with the things that you're interested in. So how did you actually get into research in the first place? What's going on there? What
Yeah,
pulled you in
so
this direction? Because it's so weird, and nobody knows what the heck we do. It's probably the culture we're sort of viewed as like all these crazy images of what professors and researchers and stuff do. It's so
yes.
detached.
So sorry, closing out something. Um, well, I actually majored in French as an undergrad, so I was very far removed from doing research in business, right? Um, but I ended up deciding I don't know, towards the end of my French degree that I was like, I don't know really what I'm going to do with this. So I decided to do my MBA, and I thought maybe that would give me some business experience to then go on into a career. But I went to Eastern Illinois University, and
Mhm.
one of the MBA tracks that they offered was a research focused MBA. And I thought it sounded cool. I've always been a nerd. I've always loved to learn and look up stuff. I think my mom has research papers that I wrote from like first grade. Looked through my encyclopedia and like wrote a research paper about a turtle or something. So I think
Actually, I found one from mine
early.
a little while ago from fifth grade. It was really cool to see that about sharks.
Yeah, see, so I think my mom maybe knew a long time ago that I would end up doing this, but yeah, so I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the research track aspect of it. I also thought the idea of being a professor and having a lot of flexibility in terms of what I was researching, and then like your schedule. I feel like you have quite a bit of flexibility with your schedule. You have summers off. It sounded like a really good career, especially since I knew I probably wanted to be a mom. So
So how true is all of that, though, at this moment?
well, it's true if you take the steps to do it, right? It's very easy to just throw yourself into your research and spend all your time on it. It's hard to step away because
Mhm.
it's always there, right? We can do it anywhere. You've always got your computer, and so. But I think if you set up boundaries for yourself and you know that you want to have a certain work-life balance, then it's been true for me, I guess, but I know I've had to be really intentional about it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree. And I think that's where like we all struggle with this is knowing that, what is the right amount? We have this sort of, I think I pointed out to you guys at one point, I think it's Catherine Kellogg at MIT has this research and looking at how interns worked in the hospital, and they had this sort of image. She called them Iron Men, in the sense that you had to work like 95 hours every single week, and if you didn't, you had to suck it up, and you're somehow wrong. And so everybody has this sort of image that's, once you're in the sort of research culture, is that's what you should do. And the week that you don't do it, or the month that you don't do it because you got life going on and stuff like that, that you're somehow wrong inside, right? Like you're deeply flawed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's your experience. I'm not sure.
I mean, I feel like the older I get, I don't know, maybe I'm getting more comfortable with not being like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm getting braver.
No, I mean, that's great though, right? Like you need to have that, you just have to have that sort of I don't know if it's self-confidence or just like disregard of what other people sort of view, or you view. It's not necessarily like what other people are actually viewing you as, is how you think other people should view you as. Does that make sense? It's kind of like the looking glass self sort of idea.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times we're worried about what other people are thinking and regarding our productivity, when they're probably not thinking about us at all.
Yeah.
So how worried about it, but it's not even on their radar because they're worried about their own things.
Yeah, absolutely. So how does that play with your research with pregnancy and stuff? Because this is all sort of, I mean, like you say, you're living your life.
Yeah.
I would love to hear it.
I'm not sure how to relate it to pregnancy. I mean, with the pregnancy research, the most recent article that we published, my dissertation, looked at perceived discrimination. And so, and this was reported from the women's perspective. And so it didn't really matter. I mean, we didn't measure whether there was actual discrimination going on, but the fact that she felt like she was being treated differently or being seen as not as committed to the organization, or being seen as maybe she's, maybe she won't even come back to work. But the extent that she thought people were seeing that caused her stress. And like, I remember feeling that way at Florida State. I mean, I cried when I told my advisor that I was pregnant.
I had the same experience. I wasn't pregnant, but I had my kids in grad school as well.
Yeah. But I cried, and I told her, I started crying. She's like, wait a second, aren't we excited about this? I was like, well, I am, but I didn't know if you would be, And I think it's that worry, right, about what other people are thinking, or we assume that we know what they're thinking or how they see us, but that's not always the case.
Yeah. I think that's such an important part of this whole family component thing in terms of the lives that we live. And I strongly believe, I think females probably face this a lot more in the workplace, just because of norms and things like that. So kudos for you for standing up to that pressure and going through that. We need more role models in this career. Just like, I'm serious though, because I think it's important to realize that there's life that you can do as well, and sort of being more authentic in who we are, and accepting some of those things is really important.
Definitely. I mean, I think by being authentic, and even, at least for me, I think if anything, it's enriched my research, right? It's allowed me to explore things that were more personal in my research that I maybe wouldn't have thought to look at otherwise. So. Yeah.
So how do you actually get these ideas? Like, where did that come from? I don't know.
Yeah. I know the pregnancy one started because I was pregnant and I was stressed I was writing my dissertation, or at least getting ready. I think I was No, it was my second year. So I was getting ready for comps.
Mhm.
Really stressed. And I remember thinking, like, I'm pretty sure stress isn't good. There's a lot of research that shows that stress is not good for our health, specifically during pregnancy. And so then that kind of snowballed into, I wonder how it ties into work stress and the different stressors that you experience at work. And it kind of went from there, I guess. But.
Yeah. And then once you came up with this kind of cool idea, like how much research was there on this? So I think like there's this big myth that we're like all knowing, or researchers or professors or whoever, graduate students, we should know absolutely. I mean, I think that's part of the pressure is that there is a sort of pressure that we should read absolutely everything and know everything. When you started digging into it, what did you find out in terms of what we understand?
Yeah, so there's a lot of like related research, right? Looking at stress and how it impacts during pregnancy. But they looked a lot at more like general stress, and I couldn't find a lot there. The management literature is getting more and more research focused on pregnancy, but that's, there's still a lot I feel like we could explore there. Specifically, when I was looking during my dissertation writing, I was looking to see if there was anything that really identified specific work stressors and how that impacts the woman during pregnancy, and then also maybe how it impacted her baby, which I didn't find fun. There's a little bit looking at work stress, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So yeah, a handful of things, but they're not necessarily in management research. And even now, there is definitely more in the management literature. But.
Yeah, I mean that's my experience. Is that once you start, like, you just narrow on a little topic, whatever that thing is, and you start digging into it, you're like, oh my God, there's nothing.
Yeah.
And
it could be specific enough, then you can definitely come up with some really good questions.
Yeah, exactly. So, there a lot of the people that watch this channel eventually watch it. So the way that YouTube works is there's like only a few people end up watching at the beginning, but then, over the years it sort of adds up, and lots of people end up watching it. But, is there things that you'd love to tell other potential researchers or PhD students, grad students? What would you like to tell them in terms of if you were to do it again, or imagine yourself that, you're 25 all over again, you're sort of thinking about this kind of stuff. What would you tell them?
I feel like there's a lot of things that we could talk about there. So first off, I would say that social support is super, super important. That was one of the reasons I chose Florida State, was because I felt like that I would have that social support, that network of other students who would be able to support each other, because it's a tough program. Getting a PhD is no joke, right?
It should.
Other people to rely on or to talk to or to know that you're going through similar things was super, super helpful. And trying to think what else I wish I would have known, or at least I would have told people. It's not as scary as you pick the right program and you fit in that program. It's not as scary as I initially thought it was going to be. I was scared to death to start a PhD program. But I think because I chose a program that I thought I would be a really good fit for, and then I had that social support with my colleagues there, it really wasn't as scary as I had made it up to be in my mind. Let's see, a few other things is to take care of yourself. Don't give in to the temptation to work all the time. You really can't, and there's diminishing returns. And so learn when you work best and work during that time, but then be okay putting it down, right? Because like for me, I'm a morning person. And so I will always get up and I can write really well in the morning, but I'm not a very good writer in the afternoon. And learning that about myself allowed me to work more effectively and be more efficient with where I spent my time on what projects or what things I was working on. So learn how you work and try to focus your most efficient time on the bigger things that actually matter. But also make time in there to take care of yourself. So. I don't know if that's kind of what you're hoping.
No, I think that's great. Well, I was curious in terms of, you thought it was scary. What did you think? What was your impressions and what we actually do in the career? Because I mean, I felt the same way too. And I try to be really open on this channel about all the goofy things.
Yeah, so I had heard a lot of like horror stories from my professors. Um, MBA, I worked as like a research assistant. Like I said, it was a research focused MBA. And I just felt like I heard a lot of horror stories about how awful a PhD program could be from different professors. And so I was really scared coming into it. I was like, I don't know if this is the right decision for me. We're going to try it. I felt like God had put me there for a reason. And so we were going to pursue it. And yeah, I don't know. I was just really scared, but it did not end up being that bad, I guess. I chalked that up.
I guess we're not doing our job then.
No, so. I think a large part of the reason it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be was because I had friends and I had a really supportive advisor who worked with me and would talk to me. And I don't know, like there was no, I don't know, I guess I had heard a lot about like maybe even abusive advisors or super high expectations, unrealistic expectations and things like that.
So what's it like when you go and interact so you made this weird kind of transition from, grad student to professor. What was that whole process like? I think it's kind of interesting for everybody.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, I felt like that was what we'd worked towards, right? That's what we worked towards during our PhD. First, you work towards passing comps. Then you want to defend your dissertation, and then you want to actually like become a professor, right? So it was like another big milestone, and weirdly enough, it gets overshadowed by like, oh no, now I have to work towards tenure. It's like there's another hurdle. You never arrive, and so you just have to get comfortable with just doing your thing, and stop constantly striving and worrying about the next milestone. But it was a good transition. It was a little weird. That first semester, I felt almost like a fraud, right? I felt like I was not qualified to teach these students. I felt like I was faking it when I was up there teaching. I definitely feel like each semester I've gotten more and more comfortable with my identity as a professor. I'm no longer a grad student. I am a professor. I have a research stream. I bring value to my students, and I think I've gotten more confident in that, I guess.
That's really good. I mean, just to let you know, I feel like a fraud all the time. It's so weird to know. I mean, I just honestly feel like this like 6-year-old that grew up in the middle of nowhere, and just having these conversations is just such a weird thing for me. So the more, and I've learned the more that you'd sort of embrace that, the better off you sort of feel in the process. So for those of you that are following along and watching this, just you're always going to feel like a fraud, and you're always going to feel like you just don't really know that much. Especially if you interact with people like with Kaylee, in terms of there's so many smart people in this world, and that's one thing that I find that I'm not sure what you think with this, but it's very intimidating sometimes when you go and interact with people at conferences and stuff. I'm not sure. What's your thoughts on that? Like, how do you deal with this sort of component of your academic life?
Yeah, so I'm slightly introverted. I'm somewhere in the middle, like very much in the middle of extrovert, introvert. So conferences, especially like those networking events, are really intimidating, and I don't fully enjoy them, but I try to do them and just try to like meet a few people, right? Because it is intimidating and it's exhausting, and I think just knowing that about myself helps. Knowing that there's nothing wrong with me, it's just my personality, and just setting like little goals, right? So I'm going to meet 2 new people at this event, and then that's it. I did something, I feel like where I get the most nervous though is to present. So I've never felt super confident as a public speaker. And I think I'm getting better at it, but I've also—
You're doing really good.
Well, this is Zoom. It feels like I'm in my bedroom. It makes it easier.
Yeah, right.
But I feel like, especially for conferences, because, you're presenting your research that is really, you've worked really hard on it, and you're sometimes almost too close to it. You don't want to hear critical feedback, or it's really intimidating to have people question it or things like that. And so I've learned to really, really practice. So if I practice a lot beforehand, where I almost know exactly what I want to say, it's almost scripted. Even though you don't follow the script exactly when you get up there, I always feel a lot more confident when I do get up there, because I know what I want to say. I've kind of thought through some of the different questions that they might have, or the limitations of my study. And when I do that, when I take the time to do that, I feel like it's just a much more effective presentation. I feel more confident up in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it. Like I used to just wing it in college, and I think maybe that's why I was always so nervous, because I never knew how it was going to go. But
it's weird. I've sort of gone the opposite of you, as sort of a nervous, introverted kind of person naturally, and I used to always sort of over prepare, and then I was too sort of wedded to things, and so I felt very, very nervous throughout the process because of that. So I've learned to be less of that.
Somewhere in the middle is what people need to do, right?
Yeah, that's it, of just feeling comfortable in your own skin. And the thing that I have to keep reminding myself is, if anybody is the type of person that's going to knock you down and say that you're like, what you're doing is terrible, it's really them that has the sort of things that they need to work on, right? Like who does that? It's one thing to ask hard questions and really get at the research and stuff like that, but the sort of other component of it, I think it's important to realize that you're not absorbing it. Like, try to realize that they have a lot of stuff to work on too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think definitely just looking at when there are hard questions, or maybe even critical feedback, right? Just looking at it as though it is constructive, right? It's supposed to be helpful. And if they don't present it that way, take it that way anyway, and then just forget about the rest of it.
So how do you,
take the stuff that's important and then just move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Because dealing with rejection and dealing with failure and all of that is really the process of science, right? Like, that's what we do is try to pick apart other people's critiques. So, what's your process with dealing with this, with the review process, or what do you do? What do you take forward with that?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a process, really. I think if we think about, like, I've never had a really horrible conference experience, so that's not a good example. But like, in terms of getting reviews or rejections on my articles, I tend to read the reviews and then just set them aside for a while, because usually I'm just like, it's like, that's not true. This is the best. I can't believe you would say that. But after I read them, if I take a step away and just, give myself some space and time to process, like, what they were saying, and kind of separate the emotion away from it, then I'm able to come back and maybe, like, see the parts that are constructive. I don't always agree with what they've said, but at least I can see them in a more constructive way, instead of taking it as it's not a personal attack, even though it feels that way because you work so hard on these things. It's not a personal attack from the reviewer, right?
Yeah.
Never...
sometimes it is. Sometimes they do take, but if you're sending it to, like, good journals and stuff, generally it's pretty constructive, because I think they weed out those people that do that in the review process too much. So, but it's still, strategy is a bit weird. We take a long time to sort of develop things, a little bit longer than in OB. And so it's like, you just feel so wedded to the particular ideas and stuff. So, I'm just sorry for those of you who are following along. It's OB's organizational behavior, which is more for micro psychology, social psychology. And strategy is more macro with the stuff that you cover in the particular field. But yeah, no, that's tricky to deal with it, right? Of distancing yourself from the idea that you created.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot of emotional strength to go through that and distance yourself. So is there anything else you wanted to talk about or say? I know that you have your own sort of blog thing that you're developing at this moment. It looks pretty cool.
I do. So I've always wanted a blog. I think it's a creative aspect of, I was a French major with an art minor to start out my educational journey. So I have always been kind of creative, and it's been fun to design it and to feel like it gives me not only a creative outlet, but also a way to share all this research that we work so hard on that maybe doesn't always make it into mainstream media or, into just your popular press books, things like that. So yeah, I felt like I have a lot of friends that are young moms or working moms or just young professionals that could probably benefit a lot from the work-life research that I do. And so that's, this podcast blog, it's a blog, but it's also a podcast, depending on whether you want to read or listen. But it's been my effort to kind of put my research out there, or at least the work family research out there, and share it in a way that maybe makes sense to other people who are not in like this academic world.
Yeah, I think that there's a real demand for that. I don't know. I think that there's sometimes a bit of a gap between the understanding of what we do and the research that's being created, and then people say that we sort of publish in obscurity. I remember somebody in my life at a prior job sort of was doing a critique of professors and researchers and say we just publish in obscurity, and I fundamentally don't believe that, because I think the stuff we do is very important and it has a lot of enormous influence. And so doing these things that bridges the gap, I think it's incredible. It's just that the rest of the world kind of doesn't get what we're doing.
Yeah, and I get it. I don't think I'd pick up an academic article if I wasn't in academia. They're intimidating. So yeah, that's my effort to kind of to bridge that gap, to reach other people who might benefit from it.
So what's I guess I'll leave a link for anybody following along, and then you can go find it there. But is there anything else you want to tell researchers, future researchers, or somebody that is an undergrad at this moment and they're struggling to figure out this whole life thing? I'm not sure if you have life put together. I don't, but yeah.
I don't have it figured out. I don't know that you ever do. I think you take it one season at a time. Enjoy grad school. Enjoy it for what it is. It's just a special season. For me, like, I couldn't wait to get out of it. I wanted to graduate, wanted to have a big girl job. But now looking back, I miss all my colleagues and I miss my friends that I made during that season, right? It was just a really special season. And so I think just taking life that way, just enjoying whatever season you're in, and being grateful for it.
I think that's great advice. I love it. And I sort of try to practice that on a regular basis, just being so thankful. And I'm thankful for the fact that you're here, and that you agreed to participate. I think to hear so many different voices is a true blessing. And actually, that's one of the things I love about academia that I'm getting more used to, is the fact that we can just get more voices, and it's a conversation that we have. So thank you.
Well, thanks for inviting me. This was fun.
Yeah, it is fun. So I guess with that, we will we'll we'll just say goodbye, and then maybe I'll chat for a second after this.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Bye, Kaylee.
Yeah, bye.